My name is Thomas Hale. I was 38 years old when I began digging graves at Greywick Cemetery. A quiet man with no wife, no children, and no debts, just a worn pair of boots, 2 good hands, and the ability to work through silence. Most men didn't last long in my trade. I did. That should tell you something. We buried by daylight. Always. That was the rule. The groundskeeper, Mr. Finch, was firm about it, said nothing good ever came from soil disturbed after dusk. I thought it superstition at first, the kind old men passed around to keep boys from sneaking in after dark. But I followed it anyway. Not because I feared the dead, but because I'd grown cautious of the things that lingered near them. The cemetery stood at the edge of Blackmere, where the mist clung low over the moors and the stones leaned like tired old men. The church had long since closed. No priest, no chapel bells, just graves, stacked row by row, each marked with a number if no name was given. The ones without names stayed with you. You never forgot where you put them. I kept a diary in the caretaker's shed, just a leather-bound ledger, tucked between bags of lime and rusted tools. It started as a log, plot numbers, dates, initials, but over time it became something else, a place to record the things I couldn't speak aloud, like the crying I heard near plot 107, or the footprints I found in soft earth with no rain for a week, small things at first, easy to dismiss, until one night I made a mistake. There was a storm rolling in, and Mr. Finch had left early with a twisted knee. A man had died the day before. No family, no parish record. A pauper, they said. The undertaker wanted the body in the ground before morning. I didn't argue. I wrapped my coat tight and stayed past sunset. That was the first time I saw them. Not people, not animals either. Shapes, moving low between the stones, flickers just beyond the lantern's edge. They didn't walk, they glided, and the closer I dug, the louder the wind howled, except it wasn't touching the trees. Only the grave, only me. I dropped the shovel. My hand was bleeding. I don't remember when that started. The ground beneath me groaned, not cracked, not caved, groaned, like something below didn't want to be touched. I left the grave half dug and ran. When I returned at dawn, the hole was gone. Not filled, gone. The earth was flat, untouched. And the coffin? Nowhere in sight. I opened the shed, took out the diary, and wrote it down. Every word, every detail. Because if I didn't, I might start to believe I imagined it. But I know what I saw, and the soil, it remembers too. After that night, I couldn't look at the ground the same way. I kept digging, of course. What else could I do? No one hires a gravedigger for his nerves. The men at the mortuary didn't ask questions. Mr. Finch never noticed a thing. He'd grown blind in one eye, and the other saw only what he wanted. But I noticed, and the ground noticed me back. It began with the frost. It came early that year, coating the stones with a glassy sheen, but only in one place, the row I'd left unfinished. I walked past it at noon, and my breath still came out in clouds. The others, nothing. Just that strip of grass, green and frozen like a wound too stubborn to heal. Then came the noise. Scratching. Soft at first, under the tool shed, like mice or birds, but deeper. Slower, I checked, of course. I crouched with a lantern and looked beneath the floorboards. Nothing. Just dirt, damp and undisturbed. But the sound kept coming. At night. Always at night. One evening, after a burial for a boy who'd drowned in the mill pond, I stayed back to clean the shovels. I should have gone home. I know that now. But something kept me there. A pressure in my chest. A pull. And then I heard it again. Only this time, not from the shed. From the graves. Plot 107. The nameless one. The one that cried. I walked toward it, lantern trembling in my grip. The light bounced off the wet stone and caught something strange. Prints. Fresh ones. Not boot prints. Bare. 5 toes. Child-sized. Leading from the grave toward the woods. No rain. No visitors. No children buried that week. I followed them. Not far. Only to the edge of the trees. But there, just before the first branch, they stopped, abrupt, as if whatever had walked never touched the earth again. I stood there a long time, listening, waiting. And then, just as I turned to leave, I saw it again. A figure, bent and narrow, standing between 2 headstones. No face. Just the sense of it watching me. I didn't run. This time I bowed my head and walked away. In the shed I wrote again. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold the pen. I wanted to burn the pages. I wanted to bury them. But instead, I did the one thing no gravedigger should ever do. I went back to plot 107 and dug. What I found wasn't a coffin. It was empty, and yet the ground still groaned, as if something had crawled out. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those bare footprints pressed into the earth. Small, soft, but wrong. And that figure standing silently between the headstones. It did not leave my mind. I sat in my room above the old stables with the window open, listening for the sound of anything that did not belong. The wind was restless. My thoughts were worse. At first light I returned to the cemetery, not with tools but with the groundskeeper's key. It opened the old records room in the chapel basement, where Mr. Finch kept the burial ledgers locked away. He said it was to prevent tampering. I never questioned that until now. The air down there was cold and stale. Dust rose in sheets as I slid the heavy books from the shelf. I ran my fingers along the dates, rows upon rows of the forgotten, the buried, the numbered. Each line bore a name, or sometimes only a description. Infant, pauper, unknown. I looked for anything that matched the grave I'd been watching. At first I found nothing. But then, buried between 2 torn pages from 1863, I found an entry crossed out in thick black ink. The name was almost illegible, but I could still make out the first letter, J, and a second word beside it, returned. I had never seen that before. The rest of the record was blank. No age, no next of kin, no cause of death. Just a plot number. 107. I closed the book slowly and sat in the stillness. Something about that word, returned, made my skin crawl. Was it a mistake? A note from the vicar? Or something else entirely? Why remove a name, only to leave that single word behind? Back outside, the sun had risen, but the graveyard still looked grey. As I passed plot 107, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small bundle of twine rested at the base of the stone. It wasn't there yesterday. I leaned down and picked it up. Inside was a folded scrap of linen, old, browned with age. Embroidered on it was a child's name, Jonathan. I stood there for a long time, holding that cloth in my hands. There was no record of a Jonathan buried there. No listing in the book, no marker, no family. just a grave that would not stay still, and a name that refused to be forgotten. That night I made a decision. I could no longer ignore what I had seen. I could no longer pretend the ground beneath my feet was just earth and bones. Something lived in this place, something quiet and old and terribly aware of me. And I feared that if I didn't act soon, it might call me by name next. I returned to plot 107 one final time. The sun had just set, and the sky bled into the clouds with that heavy, copper light you only get in late October. I had not told Mr. Finch I was going back. He would have stopped me, I think. Or worse, tried to come with me. But this, whatever this was, it had chosen me. Or maybe I had chosen it the moment I broke the rule and dug after dark. I brought no lantern this time, only a shovel and the piece of linen bearing the name Jonathan, now folded into the pocket of my coat. The wind had quieted. The cemetery stood still, like it was holding its breath. I began to dig slowly, carefully, as though I might unearth not a coffin, but a memory. The earth came up too easily, too loose, as though it had been dug recently. That did not make sense. No one else would dare disturb this ground. Not anymore. After only a few minutes, I struck wood. But it wasn't a coffin. It was a box, small, barely large enough for a child. I cleared away the dirt and opened it with trembling hands. Inside, I found a single black shoe, caked with dried mud, and a photograph. A boy, no older than 7, standing beside a stone angel with his arms at his sides and a strange stillness in his eyes. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, were the words, "He would not stay down." I reeled back, breath stuck in my throat. The wind picked up around me, sudden and angry, and then, behind me, I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, not walking, dragging. I turned. There was no one there, and yet I felt it. A presence, watching, waiting. I lowered the photograph gently into the earth, alongside the shoe, and covered the box again with soil. As I did, the wind stopped. The trees stopped. Even the grave seemed to settle, as if something had finally been accepted. When I finished, I stood for a long time over the spot. Not praying, not mourning, just acknowledging. And then I walked away. I returned to the caretaker's shed. I opened my diary, and I wrote my final entry. If you are reading this, it means I'm gone. Perhaps I left. Perhaps I stayed too long. Perhaps the soil decided it had room for one more. The name was Jonathan. He was forgotten once, but not again. Tell no one. But do not forget. That was the last night I worked at Greywick Cemetery. I do not know who buried the diary where you found it, but I hope, wherever Jonathan is now, he's resting, and I hope the ground lets him. At last.